I watched them dancing from across the ballroom, their perfect white smiles glowing under crystal chandeliers. My husband, ex-husband as of last month, twirled my former best friend to the sounds of violins as 200 guests clapped in delight. The irony wasn't lost on me. 8 months ago, I'd hired Emma as our wedding planner for our vow renewal ceremony. Now she was the bride, and David was besotted with her in ways he never had been with me. "Another glass, Ms. Mitchell?" The waiter appeared silently at my elbow, offering champagne. "Please?" I accepted the flute, my fingers steady despite the storm inside me. The bubbles matched the effervescent joy floating through the grand ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel, the same venue Emma had once suggested for my own ceremony. What the gleeful crowd didn't know was that Emma Rhodes, stunning in her custom Vera, Wong would soon discover that the careful empire she'd constructed was built on quicksand. And David, straightening his Italian silk bow tie, had no idea what awaited him after the cake cutting. My name is Olivia Mitchell, former chief marketing officer at Pinnacle Investments, and I'd spent 15 years building a life with David. We met in business school, launched careers in finance, and created the picture-perfect marriage, or so I thought. "Olivia!" Jessica, my college roommate, slid into the seat beside me. "You're actually here. I wasn't sure you'd come after everything. Are you okay?" I smiled, the expression practiced to perfection after months of therapy. Surprisingly, yes. Closure, you know? The truth was, I hadn't been invited. Emma had made sure of that, sending invitations to our entire social circle but conspicuously excluding me. Getting in had required calling in a favor from Rosewood's event director, who owed me after I'd saved his daughter's startup with emergency PR last year. 6 months ago, I'd stumbled across their affair in the most cliched way possible, coming home early from a business trip to find Emma's signature Louboutins by our front door. The confrontation that followed was surprisingly civilized. David claimed they'd fallen in love unexpectedly. Emma cried that she never meant to hurt me. What extraordinary timing they'd had, discovering their undeniable connection right after my promotion had made me the primary breadwinner in our marriage, right after David's hedge fund had lost its third major client, right after I'd inherited my grandmother's estate in the Hamptons. "The bride's looking toward the exit," Jessica whispered. "That's the third time in 20 minutes. I nodded, checking my watch. "She's waiting for someone." "Who?" "Her silent partner." I drained my champagne. Emma's boutique wedding planning business made quite a name for itself these past few years. Celebrities, tech billionaires, old money, families all clamoring for her services. I know, she's the toast of the industry. What about it? Did you ever wonder how a small-town girl with no connections built a client list like that in under 5 years? How she afforded that office on Madison Avenue? Before Jessica could answer, commotion rippled through the ballroom. 2 men in tatis and dark suits entered, scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. FBI, though their jackets didn't advertise it. Right on schedule. Emma noticed immediately, her smile faltering mid-conversation with a silver-haired guest. David, oblivious, continued chatting with the man beside him. "Olivia," Jessica hissed, "what did you do?" I watched calmly as the agents moved purposefully through the reception. "I didn't do anything, Jess. Emma did it all herself." The music faded as the agents approached the head table. Guests turned, confused murmurs spreading across the ballroom. David finally noticed, his expression shifting from annoyance to concern as he stepped protectively toward Emma. But Emma wasn't looking at the agents or her new husband. Her eyes had locked with mine across the room, the first time she'd noticed my presence. In that split second, I saw recognition, then understanding, and finally, fear. I raised my empty champagne flute in a silent toast. After all, the best revenge isn't just served cold, it's served in front of 200 witnesses. At the perfect moment, when everything they've schemed for is almost within reach. The lead agent reached Emma just as the 5-tier wedding cake was being wheeled out. Perfect timing, really. I'd been very specific about that detail when I'd provided my evidence to the Financial Crimes Division last month. Emma Rhodes? The agent's voice carried through the suddenly silent ballroom. We need you to come with us. David stepped between them, all protective husband. What is this about? This is our wedding. Sir, please step aside. Ms. Rhodes is wanted for questioning regarding financial crimes. Emma's face turned ashen beneath her flawless makeup. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route, a friendly face, or perhaps her mysterious business partner who conveniently hadn't shown up today. There must be some mistake, David insisted, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Whatever this is about, it can wait until tomorrow. The second agent produced an official document. We have a warrant, sir. Please don't interfere with federal officers. Whispers rippled through the ballroom. Phones appeared as guests began documenting the spectacular downfall unfolding before them. Tomorrow, this would be splashed across every society page and social media platform in the country. Emma Rhodes, arrested at her own wedding reception. The irony was delicious. Call Richard, Emma hissed at David, referring to his law partner. Tell him it's happening. It's happening. Not, there's been a mistake, or, I don't know what this is about. The phrasing caught David's attention too. I watched his expression shift minutely as the first seed of doubt took root. Ma'am, please come with us, the agent insisted, taking Emma's elbow firmly but professionally. Emma straightened her spine, somehow maintaining dignity in her designer gown. David, call Richard immediately. Tell him to meet me at the federal building. Her voice remained steady, practiced. This wasn't entirely unexpected then. Jessica gripped my arm. You knew about this. I discovered some interesting financial patterns while organizing my divorce paperwork, I replied quietly. Anonymous tips are taken quite seriously by the IRS and FBI these days. As Emma was escorted toward the exit, her mother collapsed dramatically into a chair. David's parents huddled together, their expressions toggling between confusion and embarrassment. The wedding planner, Emma's assistant who'd taken over the event, looked ready to faint. David stood frozen, champagne glass still in hand, watching his new bride being led away by federal agents. Then, as if remembering his role, he snapped into action. Everyone, please remain calm, he announced, lawyer voice in full effect. There's been a misunderstanding that we'll sort out quickly. Please continue enjoying the reception. The band, professionals to the core, began playing again. But the magic had evaporated. Guests clustered in small groups, whispering furiously. Several were already making discreet exits. How exactly did Emma catch your husband's attention? Jessica asked, eyes narrowed with new understanding. She planned our 10th anniversary party last year. Exquisite taste, meticulous attention to detail, connections to all the right people. I sipped my fresh champagne. David was impressed with her client list. Senators, celebrities, tech billionaires. The same clients who funneled money through her business? I smiled thinly. Allegedly. David was making his way through the crowd, smiling tensely, reassuring guests. His path was bringing him closer to our table. I wondered if he'd recognize me immediately, or if the month since our divorce had already begun to blur his memory of my face. His eyes scanned the room, landed on me, moved past, then snapped back with shocked recognition. Olivia? The disbelief in his voice was almost comical. What are you doing here? Enjoying the party, I replied calmly. Beautiful ceremony. Emma outdid herself. His face darkened. Is this your doing? The federal investigation into your new wife's business practices? No, David. That was all Emma's accomplishment. You're lying. You've always been jealous of her success. Jessica tensed beside me, but I remained perfectly composed. Jealous of success built on fraud? Hardly. Though I am curious. When did you first realize the extent of her operation? Before or after you decided to leave our marriage? A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed his face before anger replaced it. I don't know what you're talking about. No? How unfortunate that the investigators have records of your phone calls with Richard discussing Emma's situation from 4 months ago. I stood, smoothing my dress. That's about 3 weeks before you told me our marriage was over, isn't it? His eyes widened fractionally. The federal building lobby was surprisingly quiet for a Saturday evening. Jessica insisted on accompanying me, her reporter instincts clearly sensing a story bigger than a simple wedding disaster. Ms. Mitchell? A man in a charcoal suit approached as we cleared security. Agent Reeves, thank you for coming in. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. I thought it might be convenient to make my statement while the events are still fresh, I replied, following him through a labyrinth of sterile hallways. Jessica squeezed my arm. You planned this whole thing. Not the criminal enterprise, just the timing of its exposure. I kept my voice low. Emma made her own choices. Agent Reeves led us to a small conference room where a woman was already waiting, laptop open. This is Agent Finch, who's been leading the investigation. Agent Finch didn't smile as she stood to shake my hand. Ms. Mitchell, your information proved quite useful. Financial records mostly, I murmured to Jessica. The advantage of being CFO material is recognizing money laundering patterns when you see them. Agent Finch gestured for us to sit. Ms. Mitchell, we'll need a formal statement about when you first noticed irregularities in Ethereal Events' financial operations. Of course. Though I should clarify, my suspicions only developed after my husband left me for Ms. Rhodes. Before that, I had no reason to scrutinize her business affairs. The agent nodded, making a note. And Ms. Rhodes never involved you in any financial discussions regarding her company? Only socially. She'd mention high-profile clients or complain about cash flow issues, typical small business owner talk. It wasn't until I was organizing financial documents for my divorce that certain patterns emerged. What kind of patterns? Jessica asked. Emma's business grew too quickly. Her client list included ultra-wealthy individuals from Russia, Saudi, Arabia, and several tax havens. These clients paid exorbitant fees for relatively simple events. A birthday party billed at $800,000, for example. Money laundering, Jessica breathed. The oldest trick, overpaying for services to clean dirty money, I continued. The wealthy clients get plausible deniability while legitimizing their funds, and Emma gets a healthy percentage for facilitating. Agent. Finch's phone buzzed. She checked it, then stood. Excuse me for a moment. When she left, Jessica turned to me. How long have you known? About Emma's operation? 4 months? About David's involvement? 3? David's involved? Jessica whispered, eyes widening. Let's say he had knowledge that would have been valuable to investigators had he chosen to share it. The door opened and Agent Reeves returned. Ms. Rhodes has arrived and is being processed. Her attorney called ahead, Richard Calloway. I nodded. Corporate law, specializing in mergers and acquisitions. Not exactly criminal defense expertise. And Mr. Mitchell? Agent Reeves asked. Not yet, though I expect he'll be arriving shortly. Agent Finch returned, her expression revealing nothing. Ms. Mitchell, we're ready for your formal statement. Ms. Parker? She looked at Jessica. You'll need to wait outside. Jessica squeezed my hand before leaving. I'll be right out there. As the door closed, Agent Finch studied me. You chose quite the moment to provide your evidence, Ms. Mitchell. The investigation would have proceeded regardless of when I came forward. True, but wedding day arrests make quite an impression. She opened a folder. Mr. Mitchell arrived about 5 minutes ago. He seems quite distressed. I imagine so. White-collar criminals rarely expect to face consequences. Agent Finch's expression remained neutral. You were married for 15 years. Did you suspect your husband's willingness to overlook financial improprieties before this? The question struck deeper than she could know. Had I missed signs of David's moral flexibility during our marriage? No, I answered honestly. David always presented himself as ethically rigorous. It's what attracted me to him initially. People can surprise us, she replied, typing something into her laptop. A knock at the door interrupted us. Agent Reeves poked his head in. Ms. Rhodes is asking to speak with Ms. Mitchell. Agent Finch raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. I'd be happy to speak with her, I said, maintaining my composure, though my heart raced. After I provide my statement, of course. Agent Finch studied me for a moment. Very well. Let's begin with when you first met Emma Rhodes and how she came to plan events for you and your ex-husband. My statement took 40 minutes to complete. I detailed my friendship with Emma, her role in planning our anniversary party, how she became our vow renewal planner, and the discovery of her affair with David. I explained how, while organizing financial documents for the divorce, I noticed unusual transfers to Emma's business. The amount seemed excessive, I explained, particularly since several transfers occurred after the affair began but before I knew about it. Agent Finch nodded. And what made you suspect these weren't legitimate expenses? When I cross-referenced the dates with our calendar, there were no events being planned. Plus, the amounts matched suspicious deposits in Emma's business accounts that I'd seen while helping with her taxes last year. When we finished, Agent Reeves escorted me to another room where Jessica waited. They're still questioning David, she whispered. He looks terrible. I felt a complicated twist of emotions, satisfaction mixed with an unexpected pang of sympathy. Ms. Mitchell? A different agent appeared. Ms. Rhodes is ready to speak with you now. Jessica grabbed my arm. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. I smoothed my dress and followed the agent. They had placed Emma in an interview room. Her wedding gown looked absurdly out of place against the institutional gray walls. She'd removed her veil, and her perfect chignon was coming undone. She looked up when I entered, her expression unreadable. The agent stationed himself by the door, giving us the illusion of privacy. Hello, Emma. Olivia. Her voice was hoarse. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I sat across from her. That's not why I'm here. Then why? To gloat? To see me humiliated? Her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes. Mission accomplished. I came because you asked to see me. She laughed bitterly. Right, because I wanted to congratulate you on your timing. Very dramatic. The FBI at my wedding reception. The timing wasn't my choice. The investigation reached its conclusion. Her eyes narrowed. Bullshit. You've been planning this since the day you found out about us. No, I only started investigating after finding those transfers David made to your business, the ones that coincided with your trips to the Caymans. Her face paled slightly. You don't know anything. I know enough. The question is, how much? Does David know? Something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, perhaps. David's innocent. He had no idea. Really? Because the investigators seemed to think otherwise. She leaned forward, designer dress rustling. Listen to me. David knew nothing about the business side. He thought the international clients were legitimate. He thought I was successful. And the transfers he made to your accounts? Personal loans, for cash flow. She swallowed. He believed in me, Olivia. The sincerity in her voice was convincing. Almost. But I'd known Emma for years, watched her charm clients and manipulate situations. How considerate, protecting him even now. I love him. Her voice cracked. Whatever you think of me, that part is real. Is it? Or was he just a convenient shield, respected lawyer, perfect cover for your operation? Anger flashed across her. Ace, you really think I orchestrated an affair and married him as some business move? I think you saw an opportunity. David's firm represents several of your questionable clients. His reputation provided legitimacy your business needed. That's not true. Then explain why you approached me about renewing our vows. You suggested it, remember? Right when David's firm took on the Kozlov account, one of your biggest clients. Emma's facade cracked. She glanced at the agent, then back at me. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I needed David. But not the way you think. She lowered her voice. Someone was asking questions about my business. I thought having a connection to Mitchell and Partners would provide protection. Who was asking questions? She hesitated. People you don't want to know. The implications sent a chill through me. If Emma's operation involved the kind of people I suspected, David wasn't just facing federal charges. He might be in actual danger. The door opened, and Agent Finch appeared. Ms. Mitchell, we need to speak with Ms. Rhodes privately now. I stood, studying my former friend. Was any of it real? Our friendship? For a moment, vulnerability crossed her face. Yes, that's why I asked to see you. She met my eyes. You need to warn David. Tell him not to mention Kozlov. Tell him. That's enough, Agent Finch interrupted. As I left, Emma called after me. Olivia, remember Paris? The conversation on the balcony? It's happening now. Paris. 3 years ago. Emma and I had been shopping along the Champs-Élysées before meeting David for dinner. We'd stepped onto the hotel balcony with champagne, watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle in the distance. Emma had confided in me about a client, a Russian businessman with concerning connections. If anything ever happens, she'd said, there's a flash drive in the lining of my vintage Chanel bag, the black one with the gold chain. I'd laughed it off as melodrama. Emma always had a flair for the theatrical. But now, her desperate expression made my blood run cold. I hurried back to Jessica, my mind racing. I need to go back to the venue. The wedding? Why? Jessica followed as I strode toward the exit. Emma's handbag, the vintage Chanel she carried today. I need to find it. Olivia, you can't just leave in the middle of a federal investigation. I paused at the security checkpoint. Tell Agent Finch I'll be back in an hour. It's important. Evidence they'll want. Jessica looked torn. I'm coming with you. We grabbed a taxi outside, racing back to the Rosewood Hotel. The reception was in shambles. Half the guests gone, servers dismantling decorations, shell-shocked family members huddled in corners, Mrs. Morrison's things. The wedding coordinator looked bewildered when I approached. Everything was moved to the bridal suite on the 12th floor. I need access, I insisted, showing the room key I'd pocketed from Emma's purse during our conversation. The coordinator, too overwhelmed to question me, simply nodded. In the elevator, Jessica whispered, What exactly are we looking for? Evidence. Something that might help David or incriminate him further. The bridal suite was a hurricane of wedding preparations, garment bags, makeup kits, empty champagne bottles. Emma's overnight bag sat on the bed, packed for their honeymoon to Bora Bora. There, I spotted the black Chanel clutch on the vanity. Vintage, with a delicate gold chain, the same one she'd referenced in Paris. My fingers traced the satin lining, feeling for irregularities. Near the bottom corner, I felt it, a small, hard rectangle sewn into the fabric. Using nail scissors from the vanity, I carefully cut the stitching. A tiny flash drive fell into my palm. What's on it? Jessica peered over my shoulder. I don't know yet. I pocketed the drive. But Emma wanted me to find it. Why would she help David now? Or you? That's what I intend to find out. I surveyed the room. Check her phone. There. Might be messages. Jessica picked up Emma's personal phone from the nightstand. Locked. Try 0817. Emma's mother's birthday. She used it for everything. The phone unlocked. Jessica scrolled through recent messages. There's a thread with someone named Victor. Last message received this morning. Congratulations on your wedding. Remember our agreement. A chill ran down my spine. Victor Kozlov? Could be. Wait, there's a voice message from the same number. Jessica pressed play, holding the phone between us. A heavily accented male voice filled the suite. Emma, my darling. I'm disappointed to miss your ceremony. Business, you understand. The final transfers were completed yesterday as agreed. I expect the documentation by Monday. My congratulations to your new husband. I look forward to our continued partnership. My throat tightened. Download everything. Already on it. Jessica was forwarding messages to her own phone. Olivia? What have you gotten yourself into? I didn't get into anything. Emma did, and dragged David along. You think he's innocent? Jessica looked skeptical. I don't know. I pocketed Emma's phone. But someone named Victor Kozlov is expecting documentation on Monday, and I doubt he's the patient type. A hotel phone rang, making us both jump. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Mitchell? This is reception. There are 2 gentlemen asking about Mrs. Morrison's belongings. My pulse quickened. FBI agents? No, ma'am, they say they're friends of Mr. Kozlov. Jessica's eyes widened. I covered the mouthpiece. We need to go. Now. What do I tell them? The receptionist asked. Tell them we just missed each other. The bride's mother took everything to store safely. I hung up, grabbing the flash drive and phone. Back exit. Now. We slipped out through the service corridor, taking the staff elevator to the parking garage. My hands trembled as I texted Agent Finch. Returning with evidence. Men looking for Emma's belongings at hotel, connected to Kozlov. As our taxi pulled away, I saw 2 broad-shouldered men in dark suits entering the hotel's main entrance. What? Happens now? Jessica whispered. Now we find out exactly what kind of trouble David and Emma are in, and whether I've just made myself a target. The flash drive felt impossibly heavy in my pocket. Whatever it contained had been Emma's insurance policy. Now it was mine. The federal building seemed more imposing in the gathering dusk. Agent Finch met us at security, her expression tense. Ms. Mitchell, I specifically asked you to remain in the building. I found evidence, I said, producing the flash drive and Emma's phone. Men connected to Victor Kozlov were searching for these at the hotel. Her demeanor shifted instantly. Follow me. She led us to a secure room filled with computer equipment. A tech specialist took the flash drive, connecting it to an isolated system. How did you know about this? Agent Finch asked while we waited. Emma and I were in Paris 3 years ago. She mentioned hiding evidence in her handbag if anything went wrong. And you're just remembering this now? She reminded me during our conversation. Said remember Paris as I was leaving. The specialist interrupted. Ma'am, you'll want to see this. The monitor displayed spreadsheets, hundreds of them. Financial records, client lists, offshore accounts, and transaction histories. Emma was documenting everything, I murmured. Not just documenting, the specialist said. There's a subfolder labeled Insurance. It contains recordings. He opened an audio file. Emma's voice emerged, followed by a heavily accented male. The same voice, from the phone message. I've structured the Johnson wedding as requested. $2 million through the Cayman account, split between 3 vendors. Good. And the documentation? Being prepared by my partner. I'll have everything finalized next week. Agent Finch was all ready, reaching for her phone. Get organized crime up here now. Jessica squeezed my arm. Olivia, this is bigger than financial crimes. You should go home. I can't. David. The door opened and Agent Reeves appeared. Ms. Mitchell, your ex-husband is asking for you. I glanced at Agent Finch, who nodded reluctantly. 10 minutes. Then we need to discuss protective custody. Protective custody. The words sent ice through my veins. David waited in a small conference room. His wedding tuxedo rumpled, bow tie undone. He looked up as I entered, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. "You did this," he accused, voice hoarse. "You ruined everything." "I exposed Emma's criminal enterprise," I corrected. "Something you should have done months ago." He flinched. "You don't understand. It's complicated." "Explain it to me, then." "When did you discover she was laundering money?" David ran his hands through his hair. "I didn't know. Not at first. I thought her business was legitimate." "And later? When you did know?" He looked away. "I found discrepancies in some accounts. About 4 months ago, when I confronted her, she claimed she was being forced to move money for certain clients. Said they'd threatened her." "And you believed her?" "Yes." "She was terrified, Olivia. Said she'd been trying to find a way out." "So you left me for her." "What? To protect her?" Pain flashed across his face. "It wasn't like that. We were already—" He stopped. "The affair started before I knew about the financial issues. When I found out, I thought I could help her." "By marrying her?" "That's not creating distance, David. That's entanglement." "The wedding was her idea. She said marriage to a respected attorney would give her legitimacy." I laughed bitterly. "And you didn't see how she was using you?" His expression hardened. "She loves me." "Does she? Or does she love what you represent? Respectability? Legal protection?" David leaned forward. "You found something, didn't you?" "That's why they brought you back here." I hesitated. "Emma kept records. Everything's on a flash drive she hid in her purse." The color drained from his face. "Records of all transactions? All clients?" "Apparently. Along with recordings." "Oh, God." He slumped back. "If Kozlov finds out, who exactly is Viktor Kozlov?" David lowered his voice. "Russian oligarch. Operates through shell companies. Emma's business wasn't just laundering money. It was moving funds for organized crime, sanctioned individuals. And your firm represents his legitimate businesses." "Yes. That's how Emma connected with him initially." He met my eyes. "Olivia, you need to leave. Get somewhere safe. If Kozlov thinks you have evidence—" His men were already at the hotel. David's face went ashen. "Then it's already started." A knock interrupted us. Agent Finch opened the door. "Time's up." I stood studying David. This man I'd loved for 15 years, now a stranger entangled in international crime. "For what it's worth," he said quietly. "I am sorry. Not just for the affair, but for all of this." As Agent Finch led me out, David called after me. "Olivia, the cabin in Vermont. Do you still have the key?" I turned back, confused. "Yes, why?" Emma might have left something there, something important. Agent Finch insisted on security measures. A protective detail to escort me home, agents sweeping my apartment, a secure line installed. The flash drive contents had elevated Emma's case from white-collar crime to national security concern. "We'll need you to remain available," Agent Finch explained as we finalized arrangements. "The contents of that drive implicate government officials, international business figures, and organized crime syndicates." "What about Emma and David?" I asked. "Being processed separately." "Ms. Rhodes is cooperating, reluctantly. Mr. Mitchell claims limited knowledge but is providing information about clients who may be involved." Jessica, who'd been cleared to leave hours earlier, waited in the lobby. "I've been calling your security system. No signs of disturbance at your apartment." "Thanks." The weight of the day settled heavily on my shoulders as we walked to the government SUV assigned to transport me. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Go home, lock your doors, let the agents do their job," Jessica suggested. "And maybe pour yourself an extremely large glass of wine." I smiled weakly. Sounds like a plan, but as the vehicle pulled away from the federal building, David's words echoed in my mind. The cabin in Vermont. Do you still have the key? Our weekend retreat in the Green Mountains, purchased 5 years ago as an escape from Manhattan's chaos. We'd spent holidays there, planned our future there. I hadn't visited since the divorce proceedings began. What could Emma possibly have hidden there? Actually, I said to the agent driving, there's somewhere else I need to go first. The agent, Harris, according to his credentials, frowned. Ma'am, we have orders to take you home. I need to check on a property I own, a cabin in Vermont. My ex-husband mentioned something might be hidden there, something connected to this case. Agent Harris exchanged glances with his partner. We'd need clearance for that. Then get it. Call Agent Finch. While Harris made the call, Jessica whispered, Are you sure about this? It could be a trap. That's why the agents are coming with us, I replied, though uncertainty churned in my stomach. After a tense conversation, Harris lowered his phone. We're cleared to escort you to the property, but we need to call for backup from the Burlington field office. It'll take a few hours to coordinate. I understand. As Manhattan's skyline receded behind us, I tried making sense of the day's events. 12 hours ago, I'd been watching my ex-husband marry my former best friend. Now I was heading to our former love nest with federal agents, possibly pursued by Russian criminals. The absurdity wasn't lost on me. Want to talk about it? Jessica asked softly as darkness enveloped the highway. Which part? The money laundering? The criminal conspiracy? Or the fact that I might have inadvertently signed my own death warrant? I was thinking more about seeing David again. That couldn't have been easy. I stared out the window. Honestly, it was strange. For a moment, he was the man I married, concerned, protective, apologetic. Then I remembered everything and I realized I don't know him anymore. Maybe I never did. 3 hours later, we turned onto the private road leading to the cabin. Tall pines created shadow patterns in the headlights. Agent Harris stopped half a mile from the property. Burlington agents are in position, he reported after checking his radio. Property appears secure, no signs of intrusion. My shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. They'll accompany us to the cabin, Harris continued. Ms. Mitchell, you'll need to stay behind us at all times. I nodded, anxiety tightening my chest as we continued up the winding road. The cabin appeared exactly as I remembered. Rustic A-frame nestled among towering pines, wraparound deck with Adirondack chairs, stone, chimney climbing the eastern wall. In happier times, smoke would have been curling from that chimney, David would have been stoking the fire, and I'd be unpacking groceries for the weekend. Now, federal agents with tactical gear surrounded the property, flashlights cutting through. Darkness. Clear, came the report after they'd searched the perimeter. With trembling fingers, I retrieved the key from my purse, the one I'd almost thrown away during my post-divorce purge. The lock turned smoothly, the familiar creak of the door bringing unwelcome nostalgia. Stay behind me, Agent Harris instructed as we entered. The cabin smelled of pine and disuse. Dust covers draped furniture, a reminder of abandoned plans and broken promises. What exactly are we looking for? Jessica whispered. I don't know, I admitted. Something Emma might have hidden. The federal agents methodically swept each room. I stood in the living area, trying to see the space through Emma's eyes. Where would she hide something important? Something she couldn't keep at her apartment or office. Agent Harris knelt by the fireplace, carefully prying the flagstone loose. The stone moved with surprising ease. Clearly it had been disturbed recently. There's something here, he confirmed, reaching into the cavity. He withdrew a waterproof document case, professional grade, the kind lawyers use for sensitive materials. My breath caught as he placed it on the coffee table. Ma'am, please step back while we examine this, Harris instructed. A female agent donned gloves before opening the case. Inside lay a USB drive, a small notebook, and several passport-sized booklets. Passports, the agent confirmed, carefully examining each one. 3 different identities, all with Ms. Rhodes's photo. Canadian, British, and Argentine? Escape plan, Jessica murmured beside me. There's more, the agent continued, opening the notebook. Account numbers, access codes, what appears to be property addresses in multiple countries. My stomach tightened. Emma had been preparing to disappear, and these preparations weren't recent. The notebook contained dates going back 18 months. She never intended to stay, I realized aloud. The wedding, the business expansion. It was all a facade. Agent Harris bagged the evidence. We'll need to get this to the financial crimes unit immediately. Wait, I interrupted, noticing something else in the cavity. There's an envelope. Harris reached back in, retrieving a sealed envelope with my name handwritten on the front. It's addressed to me, I said, surprised. Harris hesitated, then handed it over. You can open it, but we'll need to document the contents. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of Emma's monogrammed stationery, the same paper she used for wedding invitations. Olivia, I read aloud. If you're reading this, everything has fallen apart. I never wanted to involve you, or David, in this mess. It started small, wealthy clients asking for creative financing options. By the time I realized what I'd gotten into, it was too late to walk away. These people don't allow resignations. I genuinely loved David, still do, but I also needed his firm's protection. I'm not proud of that. The affair wasn't planned, but I won't pretend I didn't use our relationship strategically once it began. What you need to know, David isn't innocent, but he's not fully complicit either. He discovered discrepancies in January, but believed my explanation that I was being coerced. He tried to help extricate me legally. More importantly, you need to check the safe deposit box at Manhattan Trust. Box 1121. The key is taped beneath the sink in the downstairs bathroom. What's inside will protect both you and David if Kozlov comes looking. I'm sorry for betraying our friendship. If circumstances were different, I'd have explained in person. Take care of yourself. And maybe David too, if you can find it in your heart to forgive him. Don't try to find me after this. If all goes according to plan, Emma Rhodes won't exist anymore. Silence fell over the cabin as I finished reading. Manhattan Trust, Agent Harris repeated, already reaching for his phone. We'll secure the location immediately. Jessica squeezed my shoulder. Are you okay? I wasn't sure how to answer. The letter confirmed what I'd suspected. Emma had used David as protection, but suggested his involvement was more complicated than simple complicity. Agent Harris, I said quietly, I need to check under the bathroom sink. The downstairs bathroom was small but luxurious, one of the renovations David and I had splurged on. I knelt by the pedestal sink, running my fingers along its underside until I felt it, a small metal object secured with tape, a safety deposit box key. Found it, I said, carefully removing the key. Agent Harris took it, placing it in an evidence. We'll arrange for this box to be opened first thing tomorrow, with you present. As we prepared to leave the cabin, I took one last look around, at the space that had once represented our happiest times. Now it held only lies and hidden evidence. Ready? Jessica asked gently. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. Let's go. The drive back to Manhattan was mostly silent. Jessica dozed beside me while I stared out at the darkness, Emma's letter replaying in my mind. I genuinely loved David, still do. He's not fully complicit. If you can find it in your heart to forgive him. After everything, she still wanted me to protect him. The audacity was almost admirable. The bigger question remained, What was in that safe deposit box that could protect us from Viktor Kozlov? And more importantly, was it already too late? Dawn was breaking over Manhattan when we arrived at my apartment building. Agent Harris insisted on sweeping the premises before allowing me inside. "All clear," he reported. "We'll maintain surveillance outside. Agent Morales will stay in the guest room." Agent Morales, a compact woman with alert eyes, nodded professionally. "I'll try to stay out of your way, Ms. Mitchell." After they secured the apartment, Jessica hugged me goodbye. "Call me the second you learn what's in that deposit box." Alone in my bedroom, except for the federal agent down the hall, I finally allowed myself to process the day's events. My ex-husband was potentially involved in international money laundering. My former best friend had disappeared into federal custody with multiple fake identities discovered. And somewhere, a Russian oligarch was realizing his financial pipeline had been compromised. Sleep came in restless bursts. I dreamed of Emma in her wedding dress, dancing with faceless men while David watched from behind prison bars. At 9 sharp, Agent Finch arrived to escort me to Manhattan Trust Bank. The Financial Crimes Unit had already secured the necessary warrants. "Any word on Emma?" I asked as we rode downtown. "Still in custody, cooperating extensively, likely building her case for a plea deal." Agent Finch checked her phone. "Your ex-husband was released on bail an hour ago. His firm posted bond." "Of course they did," I murmured. Mitchell and Partners would protect their own, at least until they determined how deeply David was implicated. The bank manager met us in the marble lobby, visibly nervous about the federal presence. "Everything is prepared, Agent Finch. If you'll follow me." We were led to a private room where the safety deposit box awaited. Agent Finch gestured for me to use the key. Inside lay a USB drive, similar to the one from Emma's purse, and a sealed manila envelope. Agent Finch handled both with gloved hands. "We'll need to examine these before you can view the contents," she explained, already bagging the items. "I understand." I hesitated. "But Emma's letter suggested this was meant to protect me. Shouldn't I know what it contains?" Agent Finch's expression softened slightly. "Come with me to the field office. Once we've verified there's nothing dangerous, you can review everything." 2 hours later, I sat in the same secure room where we'd examined the first flash drive. The contents of this one were even more explosive. Detailed records of Kozlov's entire operation, including transactions involving government officials, corporate executives, and even a federal judge. "Emma was thorough," Agent Finch commented, scrolling through files. "She documented everything." Insurance policy, I realized. She was protecting herself in case Kozlov turned on her. The manila envelope contained photographs, surveillance, images of Kozlov meeting with various individuals, including David. My stomach dropped seeing my ex-husband shaking hands with the oligarch in what appeared to be a restaurant's private dining room. "When was this taken?" I asked, voice tight. "Date stamp says February 15th. About a month after you filed for divorce. A month after our separation, but months before David claimed he discovered Emma's criminal activities. He had lied. Again. There's more, Agent Finch said, revealing additional photos. These appear to be from a property in the Hamptons. I recognized it immediately. That's my grandmother's estate. The images showed Emma touring the grounds with Kozlov and another man I didn't recognize. David stood nearby, gesturing toward the main house. "When was this?" "Last month." Agent Finch studied my reaction. "Did you know your property was being shown to these individuals?" "Absolutely not. That house is still in probate. No one has authorization to sell it." Agent Finch made notes. "Ms. Mitchell, were you aware that your ex-husband had scheduled a meeting with the probate judge handling your grandmother's estate? For next week?" My blood ran cold. "No, that's impossible without my knowledge. I'm the sole beneficiary." "According to these documents," Agent Finch continued, revealing printouts from the flash drive, There was a plan to contest the will, claiming your grandmother had promised the property to a foundation, one controlled by shell companies linked to Kozlov. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. David and Emma hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, they'd planned to steal my inheritance using Kozlov's resources and legal manipulation. They were going to take everything, I whispered. Agent Finch nodded grimly. And from these records, it appears they would have succeeded. The judge assigned to your case was compromised. I stared at the evidence of their betrayal, feeling strangely hollow. The revenge I'd orchestrated at their wedding now seemed almost insignificant compared to what they'd planned for me: protective custody. The words had a surreal quality as Agent Finch outlined the arrangements. I'd be moved to a safe house, given a temporary identity, and kept under constant protection until the investigation concluded or the threat diminished. How long? I asked, trying to process this new reality. Impossible to say. Weeks, possibly months. Agent Finch's expression was sympathetic but firm. This organization's reach is extensive. We've identified connections to 3 countries, diplomatic corps, multiple financial institutions, and at least 1 federal judge. All through wedding planning, I said incredulously. Ethereal Events was the perfect cover. High-end clientele, international transactions, cash-intensive operations. Ms. Rhodes created a masterful laundering operation. I thought of Emma's meticulous attention to detail, her insistence on perfection in every event. Those same qualities had made her an excellent criminal. You'll need to pack essentials only, Agent Finch continued. We move you tonight. I need to make arrangements for my work, my apartment. We'll handle it. Your safety is the priority. As we left the federal building, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Important. D. David. I showed Agent Finch, who frowned. How did he get this number? You changed it after the divorce, correct? Yes, it's not public information. A chill ran through me. If David could access my private number, what else could he discover? Don't respond, Agent Finch instructed. We'll trace this. Back at my apartment, I packed methodically while Agent Morales kept watch. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, a few photographs. The essentials of my life condensed into 2 suitcases. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Please live. 5 minutes. It's about your safety. Meet at our place. Our place could only mean one location, the bench in Central Park where David had proposed 15 years ago. We'd spent countless Sunday mornings there, reading the paper, planning our future. I showed Agent Morales, who immediately relayed the message to Agent Finch. Absolutely not, came the response. We're accelerating the timeline. Be ready to move in 30 minutes. I continued packing, but couldn't shake the nagging feeling that David might actually have important information. He knew Kozlov, understood the threat. What if he was trying to warn me about something specific? Agent Morales stepped out to take a call, giving me a moment alone. Against all better judgment, I texted back, cannot meet. Federal protection. If legitimate concern, contact Agent Finch. The response came instantly. They've been compromised. Trust no one. Check your email. Then delete this thread. My hands trembled as I opened my email. A new message from an encrypted address contained a single video file. I pressed play. The footage showed Emma in what appeared to be an interrogation room, speaking to someone off camera. He planned everything, using my business, using me. Kozlov is his client, not mine. I was just the front. A male voice asked, and the real target? Olivia Mitchell. Her grandmother's estate is sitting on undisclosed mineral rights worth millions. David discovered it during the divorce proceedings. That's why they needed me, to launder the purchase. Funds through my business. The video ended abruptly. I stared at the screen, mind racing. If this was authentic, the entire narrative had just shifted. Emma wasn't the mastermind. David was. I'd been targeted from the beginning. Agent Morales returned. Ready to go, Miss Mitchell? I nodded numbly, deleting the message thread as instructed. Just finishing up. Everything okay? You look pale. Just processing. I zipped my suitcase with shaking hands. Where exactly are we going? Secure location upstate. Agent Finch will brief you when we arrive. As we headed to the door, another text arrived. If you're still in your apartment, get out now. Different exit than planned. They've been tracking your phone. Not safe. Agent Morales, I said carefully. Did the extraction plan change recently? She looked surprised. No. Why? Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. Agent Morales drew her weapon. Stay back. She instructed, moving to the security monitor. The screen showed Agent Harris in the hallway. Agent Morales relaxed, holstering her weapon. It's Harris, she said, reaching for the door. In that instant, David's warning collided with Emma's video. Testimony in my mind. If David was telling the truth about federal agents being compromised... Wait, I called, but it was too late. Agent Morales opened the door and froze at the sight of Agent Harris's expressionless face. You're early, she said, tension creeping into her voice. We weren't expecting pickup for another 20 minutes. Something in Harris's posture changed subtly. Plans change. We need to move now. I backed away slowly, remembering David's text. Get out now. I reached my bedroom, heart pounding, and quietly locked the door. Voices murmured in the hallway. Agent Morales questioning Harris about the schedule change. I had seconds, maybe a minute. Fire escape. The window beside my dresser led to the building's fire escape. I grabbed my phone, purse, and the small emergency bag I'd prepared during my divorce. Passport, cash, spare credit card. Then I eased the window open. The metal landing creaked slightly as I stepped out. 10 floors below, Manhattan traffic continued its relentless flow, oblivious to my desperate situation. I glanced back through the window, just in time to see my bedroom door handle turning. I descended as quickly as caution allowed, the iron stairs cold beneath my fingers. At the 8th floor, a sharp crack echoed above. Gunshot, muffled by a suppressor. Agent Morales or Harris? Impossible to know. I kept moving, reaching the alley behind my building without hearing pursuit. Remembering David's warning about my phone being tracked, I removed the battery and dropped the device into a passing garbage truck. Then I did what New Yorkers do best, disappeared into the crowd. 3 blocks away, I ducked into a coffee shop and used their phone to call Jessica. It's me, I said when she answered. Don't say my name, I need help. Oh my God, she whispered. Where are you? The news is reporting gunshots at your building. I got out, but I can't go to the police. The feds might be compromised. What? Do you need? A place to think. Somewhere nobody would look for me. My sister's pied-à-terre in Tribeca. She's in Europe for 3 months. I'll text you the address and door code from a burner phone in 15 minutes. Thank you. And Jess, don't tell anyone, not even your editor. Be careful, she said before hanging up. I purchased a baseball cap and sunglasses from a street vendor, then caught a taxi to Grand Central, deliberately away from Tribeca. From there, I walked, doubling back several times before heading to the address Jessica provided. The apartment was small but elegant, clearly a wealthy person's occasional crash pad. I locked the door, drew the blinds, and finally allowed myself to breathe. My options were limited. I couldn't trust the FBI, couldn't go home, couldn't contact anyone who might be monitored. David seemed to have insider information, but trusting him felt dangerous after everything I'd learned. Emma's recorded testimony rattled through my mind. He planned everything. Kozlov is his client, not mine. Her grandmother's estate is sitting on undisclosed mineral rights. Was it possible? Had David orchestrated this entire scheme? The affair, the divorce, the wedding, all to gain control of my inheritance? I logged into the building's secure Wi-Fi through a private browser and searched news about my grandmother's property. Nothing unusual appeared, but a more general search about mineral rights in the region revealed several recent corporate purchases of seemingly ordinary estates in the Berkshires. A pattern emerged. Over the past 2 years, shell companies had acquired 5 properties within 20 miles of my grandmother's estate. All purchases followed a similar template: contested wills, sudden marriages, unexpected divorces. I was piecing together a larger conspiracy when a soft knock at the door froze me mid-thought. "Delivery," called a woman's voice. I hadn't ordered anything. Moving silently to the door, I peered through the peephole. Emma stood in the hallway, dressed in jeans and a nondescript sweater, her wedding-perfect appearance completely transformed. Her hair was pulled back, face bare of makeup, eyes darting nervously. Impossible. She was supposed to be in federal custody. I remained absolutely still, barely breathing, until she knocked again. "Olivia, please," she whispered, mouth close to the door. "I know you're in there. Jessica told me. We have 10 minutes before they track me here." Jessica had betrayed me? Or was Emma lying? "I escaped custody to warn you," she continued. "David's men killed Agent Finch. They're hunting for you." My mind raced. This could be another trap. But if Emma had wanted me dead, she could have brought reinforcements instead of coming alone. "Slide your ID under the door," I demanded. "They took everything when I was arrested." "But I have this." She slipped a folded paper beneath the door. It was the photo from our Paris trip 3 years ago, the one where she'd first mentioned her emergency evidence. We were laughing on the hotel balcony, champagne glasses raised. In a toast, the Eiffel Tower twinkling behind us. No one else had this photo. With trembling fingers, I unlocked the door, keeping the chain fastened, and peered through the crack. Emma's eyes widened with relief. "Thank God, we need to move. Now." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm the only one who knows the truth about David," she replied urgently. "And because in about 7 minutes, Kozlov's men will arrive at this building." I unlatched the chain and pulled Emma inside, locking the door behind her. "Explain." "Quickly," I demanded, watching her scan the apartment. "David isn't who you think," Emma said, checking windows. "His family money comes from his grandfather's organized crime connections. Mitchell and Partners was established to launder those funds legitimately." "That's absurd. I've met his family." "You've met actors. Think about it. Have you ever been to a family home? Seen childhood photos? Met distant relatives?" My mind raced through 15 years of memories. David had always claimed his parents preferred visiting us in New York. Family gatherings were always small, controlled. "The mineral rights under your grandmother's property are worth billions," Emma continued, gathering my things. "Rare earth elements essential for technology. David discovered this through a client 5 years ago." "5 years?" I whispered. "We were happily married then." "Were you? Or was he already working late, missing anniversaries, suggesting separate vacations?" The pieces clicked with sickening clarity. David's emotional withdrawal hadn't begun with Emma. It had started years earlier. You were his exit strategy, I realized. A way to access my inheritance without suspicion. If we divorced normally, prenuptial provisions would limit his claims, but if I caught him cheating with my best friend, I'd be the villain, Emma finished. You'd focus your anger on me, never questioning his motives. Then why the elaborate money laundering? Initially, that was separate, my own operation. David discovered it last year and saw an opportunity. He connected me with Kozlov, expanding my client base while gaining leverage over me. So the affair? Emma looked away. Started as manipulation but became complicated. I did fall for him. That part wasn't fake. A car door slammed outside. Emma tensed, moving to the window. Black SUV, 2 men. We have 3 minutes. She handed me a prepaid phone. This has 1 number programmed, my handler. Handler? Witness protection. I've been helping the Treasury Department track Kozlov for 18 months. My head spun. You're an informant? Asset is the preferred term, she said grimly. I was recruited after my business caught their attention. The money laundering was selective, targeting specific criminals while documenting everything. The buy. Arrests at your wedding? Orchestrated. My Treasury contacts arranged it when we discovered David's true agenda. Your feelings for David? Complicated. Real attraction mixed with assignment parameters. I wasn't supposed to fall for him. Her expression hardened. Then I discovered what he planned for you. Selling your inheritance to Kozlov while framing you for financial crimes. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Emma pulled me toward the bedroom. Fire escape. Now. We climbed down 3 floors and entered through an emergency exit. Emma led me through service corridors to a loading dock where a delivery van waited. Get in, she instructed. How did you arrange this? Treasury resources. They're moving us to a secure location. As the van pulled away, Emma handed me an envelope. Your grandmother's property survey from 1978. It documents the mineral deposits but was suppressed. Your grandmother kept it secret, fearing exploitation. She left you coded instructions in her will. The book collection, I whispered, remembering. The provision requiring me to maintain her library. The information is hidden there, Emma nodded. In a first edition Austen. Microfiche in the binding. What happens now? We testify. Treasury has enough to indict David and Kozlov, but they need us alive. I stared at my former best friend. Betrayer, criminal, government asset, runaway bride. Why did you do it, Emma? The money laundering, the affair, all of it? The laundering started as survival. My business was failing. The government recruitment came later. As for David? She looked away. That's the one thing I can't fully explain. The van turned onto the highway. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the promise of justice, if we survived to testify. One last question, I said. The wedding, was that your idea, or David's? Kozlov's, actually. He thought it would legitimize certain transactions. David agreed, because it accelerated his timeline. And you went along with it? I didn't have much choice by then. She checked her phone. We'll reach the safe house in 40 minutes. Try to rest. As Emma turned away, I noticed a bloodstain spreading across her side. You're hurt, I gasped. Flesh wound. Agent Harris wasn't happy about my escape. She pressed her hand against the injury. I'll be fine until we reach the safe house. We were fugitives now, bound together by betrayal, conspiracy, and the desperate hope of survival. The safe house was a nondescript farmhouse in rural New Jersey. A stern-faced man met our van, ushering us inside. I'm Walker, Treasury Department. Let's get Ms. Rhodes' medical attention. 2 agents helped Emma to a back room. I followed, unwilling, to let her out of my sight. Just a graze, the female agent said after examining Emma's wound. You're lucky. Doesn't feel lucky. Emma grimaced as they bandaged her side. Walker entered with a satellite phone. DC needs an update. Ms. Mitchell, please come with me. In the kitchen, Walker established a secure connection while I sank into a chair. Exhaustion, finally catching up. This is Walker. Asset Nightingale and package secured at Farmstead. Asset requiring minor medical attention. Package unharmed. I realized I was package, reduced to an object needing protection. Understood, Walker said, ending the call. We have a situation. David Mitchell has disappeared. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? He made bail 2 hours ago. His attorney drove him home, but by the time our surveillance arrived, he was gone. The service elevator, I said. It connects to the adjacent parking garage. He showed me once. Walker made notes. Any other properties or hiding places you know about? I listed what I could remember: the Vermont cabin, a Florida timeshare, corporate apartments. What happens now? I asked. We keep you secure until Mitchell is apprehended or until Treasury moves forward with indictments. How long will that take? Hard to say. Days, possibly weeks. The prospect of being confined with Emma, the woman who'd betrayed me, married my husband, and apparently worked for the government, was almost too much. Emma emerged, her side bandaged, face pale but composed. Your wound? I asked. Painful but manageable. She accepted coffee. Any news? David's gone, I said. Disappeared after making bail. Emma's cup froze halfway to her lips. That's not possible. He used an exit we didn't know about, Walker admitted. He'll go to Kozlov, Emma said with certainty. He needs protection now. If David reached Kozlov, they could accelerate whatever plans they had for my grandmother's property, or worse, come after us. I need to call my primary handler, Emma told Walker. There's a contingency for this. Walker handed her the satellite phone. Emma dialed from memory, speaking in code phrases. After a brief conversation, she handed it back. They're moving us. Different safe house, higher security. Transport arrives in 30 minutes. Is that necessary? I asked. David knows about Treasury's standard safe houses, Emma explained. He handled legal work for the department years ago. I realized David might have planned for this scenario. He'd always been methodical. What if he anticipated all of this? I said. The evidence at the cabin, the safe deposit box, even your arrest, what if those were deliberate steps in his plan? Emma and Walker exchanged glances. It's possible, Emma acknowledged. David's level of preparation has always been extensive. Then we need to think like him, I insisted. Where would he go that's not on any official record? An image flashed in my mind, a casual conversation years ago about property purchased through shell companies. There's a compound, I said. In the Adirondacks. He mentioned it once when we'd had too much wine. Said it was untraceable, paid for with cryptocurrency. Walker reached for the phone. Location details? Near Lake Placid. Remote. He said it had its own power supply, security, systems. Called it his reset button. As Walker relayed this to his superiors, Emma moved closer. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For everything. I studied her face. Which parts were lies, Emma, and which were real? Our friendship was real, she said, eyes steady. The initial manipulation was real too. The complicated mess it became, that was the most real of all. Walker returned. Change of plans. We move now. Intelligence suggests Mitchell's people may be searching this area. As we gathered our belongings, Emma gripped my arm. Whatever happens, remember, David is more dangerous than Kozlov. He has nothing left to lose. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse waiting room, watching rain streak the windows. My testimony against David and Kozlov was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes, the culmination of a nightmare that had begun on what should have been my ex-husband's wedding day. The door opened and Emma entered, dressed conservatively in a navy suit. Her witness testimony had concluded yesterday. How did it go? I asked. As expected, defense tried to paint me as an opportunistic criminal seeking immunity. She sat beside me. The recordings spoke for themselves, though. The evidence against David and Kozlov had proved overwhelming. Treasury's investigation, combined with Emma's extensive documentation and my testimony about the property scheme, had led to a 30-count indictment. Have they told you about David's plea offer? Emma asked quietly. I nodded. 20 years instead of life, contingent on full cooperation against Kozlov's network. Are you okay with that? The question was complicated. Was I okay with the man I'd loved for 15 years? The man who'd betrayed me, planned to steal my inheritance, and nearly gotten me killed. Serving only 20 years? Justice isn't always satisfying, I replied. But his testimony will bring down bigger players. I understand the calculation. Emma studied me. You've changed. Nearly dying multiple times tends to have that effect. The safe house transfer had been ambushed 3 months ago. Only Walker's last-minute route change had saved us from David's mercenaries. We'd spent weeks in deep protective custody, moving, frequently, always watching for threats. Meanwhile, my grandmother's property had been secured by federal agents. The mineral rights were now under government protection, with arrangements for environmentally responsible extraction that would eventually make me wealthy beyond imagination. What will you do after? Emma asked. When this is all over? Travel. Somewhere without extradition treaties or cell service. I smiled faintly. I'm thinking of writing a book. How my ex-husband and best friend tried to steal my inheritance? Something like that. Publishers are already making offers. We sat in companionable silence, a strange development considering our history. Shared trauma had created an unusual bond between us. Not friendship, exactly, but something equally complex. I heard from Treasury this morning, Emma said. My new identity is ready. Once the trial concludes, I disappear. Witness protection. Emma's reward for cooperation was a new life far from New York social circles and wedding planning. Where will they send you? Can't say. Somewhere I've never mentioned wanting to live. She looked down at her hands. That's how it works. They place you where no one would think to look. I thought about Emma's new life. New name, new history, new beginning. There was something appealing about shedding your past completely. Maybe I'll join you, I joked. We could open a wedding planning business together. Emma's laugh was genuine. I think we've both had enough weddings for one lifetime. A marshal appeared at the door. Ms. Mitchell, they're ready for you. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Emma rose, too. Good luck in there, she said. Remember what we practiced. Don't let the defense attorney rattle you. I've faced worse than lawyers recently. True. She hesitated, then embraced me briefly. For what it's worth, Olivia, I am sorry. For everything. I know. And strangely, I did. The woman who'd stolen my husband, helped target my inheritance, and then saved my life multiple times, was perhaps the most honest person in this entire sordid affair. The marshal cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, we need to proceed. Go, Emma said, stepping back. Make them pay. I followed the marshal down the hallway, mentally preparing to face David across the courtroom. According to prosecutors, he hadn't looked at Emma once during her testimony. I wondered if he would look at me. The courtroom doors loomed ahead. Beyond them waited justice, closure, and the first day of whatever my life would become after this chapter ended. I paused at the threshold, thinking about the wedding day that had started this journey. Emma in her designer gown, David in his custom tuxedo, me watching from the shadows with revenge in my heart. None of us could have imagined where we'd end up. The marshal opened the door. Camera flashes erupted as I entered the packed courtroom. Journalists scribbled notes, sketch artists captured my expression, spectators craned for a better view of the woman at the center of what the media had dubbed the wedding day conspiracy. And there, at the defense table, sat David, thinner, paler, his confident demeanor replaced by defeated resignation. As I walked to the witness stand, his eyes finally met mine. In that moment of connection, I saw something I hadn't expected. Recognition. Not of me as his ex-wife or as his victim, but recognition of equals.